Welcome to Canada's most irreverent talk show. This is the Andrew Lawton Show, brought to you by True North.
Show here, the Andrew Lawton Show here on True North on this Wednesday, August 16th, midway through the week. Hope it is a good week for you, or at the very least a tolerable and not insurmountable week. We are going to be talking to Dalbir Bala a little bit later on in the show. Now, this is going to be a very fun interview, I hope, because this is a guy who my mic is doing the same thing it did yesterday. We might have to look into why this has gone on. I've done the thing that supposedly fixed it yesterday, but I don't know why it fixed it. But Dalbir Bala is the gentleman you may have seen in a number of news stories who has he did what we were all being told to do, which is get an electric vehicle, and he took it on a big road trip thinking it was going to be great for his family and ended up having to abandon it in the United States and rent a gas-powered, I think it was a RAV4 to get home. So we'll talk to Dalbir in just a little bit of time. But I want to turn our attention to Prince Edward Island first and foremost, where this morning Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservatives, did a press conference, and a poor unsuspecting reporter who has been around and should have known better set him up for the perfect throwdown. She should have seen him do this before and know this was going to happen when she framed the question the way she did. She did the thing that a lot of reporters do, and it doesn't really work, especially against a guy like Pierre Poilievre or Ron DeSantis in the U.S., that the old people say or experts say trick. And this was the exchange. Now, admittedly, a little bit awkward to watch, but this is Pierre Poilievre being Pierre Poilievre in PEI.
Hello, Mr. Poilievre. A number of your own comments and actions have been characterized as dog whistling to the far right.
By who?
By a number of different. But I think it's been characterized by that way. But are you trying to court? Are you trying to court the far right?
Sorry, I just need to clarify. By who?
By a number of different experts and a number of different people who work in this. Okay, well, I think it's been established that this is a concern. Are you trying to court the far right vote?
Who are these experts? You say that there are experts who are saying this. Who are they?
My question is, are you trying to court the far right vote?
I'm sorry. Your question seems to be based on a false premise. You can't even tell me who these experts are. It sounds like it's just a CBC smear job. Thank you.
But what about the question about whether that's
the answer is that
intention?
I have a common sense agenda to axe the carbon tax, bring home powerful paychecks, clear the way to build affordable homes, to put people in housing that they can afford. That is a common sense, mainstream Canadian agenda. And I know that Justin Trudeau's supporters are so desperate to distract from that because his political career is falling apart. So we're seeing an attempt here to distract and protect Justin Trudeau from his extremely unpopular carbon taxes and other failing policies. But we won't let him or his or others distract from that reality. So thank you.
That was Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre accusing a reporter who, incidentally, wasn't even with CBC of being asking a question that sounded like a CBC smear job. The question, in case you missed it there, are you courting the far right vote? Now, there was zero justification for the question apart from what unnamed experts say. And experts say he's dog whistling to the far right. Experts say, which experts? Well, experts, people are saying it. People, expert, you know what I'm talking about. And when he says, no, I don't, tell me, she's like, well, I mean, my question is, so the whole point of a question is that when you're a reporter, you can't just go and pull something out of thin air and get an answer on it or expect an answer on it. You can't go at a press conference and say, are you robbing any banks? Because it would be a little odd if you don't give justification for why you are asking that question. For example, perhaps your premise is, well, a report has said that you might like to be robbing banks. So is it true? Are you robbing banks? So in this case, she's coming with accusations that are based on what unnamed, uncited experts are saying. I assume She's talking about the story we were discussing yesterday on the show, in which CBC the Canadian press actually quotes unnamed experts saying that Pierre Poilievre talking about the World Economic Forum is dog whistling to the far right or something. But she doesn't even say that in her question. She's not even referring to explicitly the World Economic Forum. And Pierre Poilievre has done what the last two Conservative leaders have failed to do, which is refuse to play the media's game when they ask questions like that. Aaron O'Scheer, there's a Freudian slip, Aaron O'Toole and Andrew Scheer. And I should say about Andrew Scheer, he's acknowledged that this was a bit of a shortcoming when he was the Conservative leader. And he's been a lot more forceful in his engagements after being the Conservative leader. But those two, when they were campaigning and the media asked them very loaded questions, would kind of just go along with them. They wouldn't really push back against these very charged premises. And what Pierre Poilievre did, when I looked at it, reminded me of this old interview that was done by Australian broadcaster George Negus with Margaret Thatcher. I'm mixing up my names. George Negus did not interview Margaret Atwood, and Margaret Atwood was not the British Prime Minister. Margaret Thatcher, I would much rather Margaret Thatcher than Margaret Atwood. In fact, I think Margaret Thatcher might have even done a better job at writing The Handmaid's Tale than Margaret Atwood. But George Negus had interviewed Margaret Thatcher in Britain. He was from Australia. He had come to the UK, and he had just been on assignment in Central America, and was sitting down with Margaret Thatcher, and having literally just come from the airport, was dropping the people in Britain say shtick. And this is how Margaret Thatcher handled it.
Why do people stop us in the street almost and tell us that Margaret Thatcher isn't just inflexible, she's not just single-minded. On occasion, she's plain pig-headed and won't be told by anyone.
Would you tell me who has stopped you in the street and said that?
Ordinary Britons.
Where?
In conversation.
But I thought you'd
pubs.
just come from Belize.
Oh, this is not the first time we've been here.
Will you tell me who and where and when?
Ordinary Britons in restaurants, in
How many?
cabs.
How many?
I would say at least 1 in 2.
I'm sorry, it's an expression I've never heard. Tell me who has said it to you, when,
These are
where.
people that we meet in passing.
But
and we
of course you
obviously
cannot
raise
say
the
who
question
or where.
of the state of their country with them. And they tell us, yes, we have a tough Prime Minister, but she's a little bit pig-headed. She won't be told by anybody.
Isn't this interesting? Even the tone of voice you're using is changing from what you used earlier.
That was the Iron Lady, establishing why it is she was so deserving of the name the Iron Lady. And if a reporter is going to do the whole people say thing, they should be prepared to show the receipts. Now, some people have said that Margaret Thatcher was being a little bit unfair there. Well, how is he supposed to know the names of people? And there is some truth to the idea that there can be a current that exists in society, and you are asking a question that is accurately reflecting that current. But even so, more often than not, when journalists are doing people say, what they're actually saying is, I think, but I can't just say this and attribute it to myself because I'm supposed to be impartial. So when they defer to experts or people that are unnamed, that are uncited, they're trying to kind of hide their own perception of a person. I mean, if the reporter in this case had just come out and said, listen, when you do this and this and this, it looks to me like you are doing X. You are courting the far right vote. What say you, sir? Or to use the old line of British barristers, I put it to you, sir, that when you say X, you are courting the far right vote. What do you say to that? But that's not what happened. Instead, we defer to experts who are supposedly authorities on what the Conservative leader stands for and says. And Pierre Poilievre's response to this was that I'm not playing that game. And I think it was, if you look at the reaction on Twitter, he seems to be winning that exchange very much. We'll get back to this in a little bit of time, but I want to draw our attention to this story. Very fun story in some ways, because it just speaks to what a lot of people kind of feel is the inevitable outcome of this rapid and extreme pivot to electric vehicles. But we're all told electric vehicles are the future. It's the way we do something for the planet. We're told electric vehicles are just as good as gas-powered vehicles or diesel-powered vehicles. You'll save money. And more importantly, you won't have any issues getting around the country. You won't have any issues because we've got all these charging networks. You've done it. You do your part for the planet. Well, Dalbir Bala thought he was doing exactly that. He spent over $100,000 to buy a Ford pickup truck that was electric. You can even get an electric pickup truck. So it's not even like you're stuck with this little, crappy Prius. You can actually get a big manly electric truck. And he did that and took his family on a vacation to Chicago. They were able to get there, but on the way back, they ran into problem after problem. Dalbir Bala joins me now. Dalbir, it's good to talk to you. Thanks very much for coming on today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So first off, why did you decide to get an electric truck?
Okay, so first of all, for newer technology, cleaner energy, so I bought that idea. And no, I'm in trucking, so and I use my truck for going out to do recreational work. So I need to haul something, trailers, RV, boat. So and I change my truck every 4 years. So it's just okay. This thing comes up. Let's try this one.
So it's a Ford F-150 Lightning. You paid $115,000 for it. You did the thing we're all told we're supposed to do here. You had to spend more money on that, as I understand it, your own house to get like the charger put in place. But what happened when you were trying to drive home from Chicago?
Oh, actually, I have to correct you. The problem happens on the way to Chicago, not coming
on the
back.
way to Chicago.
On the way. Okay, yeah. We started our trip on July 27th on Thursday morning, 5 p.m. We were like three families, like old friends with our kids. And so it's first stop for ours was Wisconsin Dells. We have to stay there for 3 days for, water parks. And so we figured out it was around 1,050 kilometers to Wisconsin Dells. And to my experience driving this truck, I was doing around 450 kilometers in city range. So we decided to, okay, we can charge a couple times, 350 kilometers, and then another after 350 kilometers, and we'll get to Wisconsin Dells. And we have a charger at our resort over there. And at our first stop in Fargo, we already researched it before we were going to charge. And range was like actual advertised range on this truck is around 515 kilometers. But to my experience, it was going 450. So, okay, that's why we plan to charge for after 350 kilometers. When we got to Fargo, that level 3 charger, which was available, that was at their West Acres mall parking lot, it took 2 hours and 5 minutes to charge it. And more than that, to my surprise, I never expected that it would be that expensive. It took $56 US to charge it. And that comes surprise to me. So, but we were on the trip, and a bunch of friends, we got together. We hardly planned after months of planning, all the occasions, everything. So you know what? Okay, let's go ahead with that trip. We'll see it after what's going to happen. So to our second stop, where we have to charge in Albertsville, Minnesota, right, in the outlet mall. They have a parking. They have a charger in their parking lot over there. So that charger was faulty. Like it didn't connect to the truck, and my truck was showing it inside it as a faulty connection. So we called the number on the charger to get it going. So, but it was just a call center. They said some technician will give me call. Nobody got the call. So that and after that, that closest level 3 charging station was around 10 miles away. So I went there. To my surprise, that charger was out of commission. And at that point, it was late evening. We started our trip around 5 a.m. It was around 4:30, 5 o'clock already in the evening. Everybody of us was like kind of frustrated and, distracted about only going through this thing, right? So our range for the truck only remains at around 10 or 12 miles at the time, right? And the closest level 3 charger was 20 miles away. So we decided, you know what, we had a week-long trip. So, you know what, make me decide that, you know what, let's leave it here. So we took a rental car and towed that truck to the Ford dealership over there, and we completed the trip with our car. And on our way back, we picked up the truck and come back.
So you were able to get the truck back at least on that. You were able to get it charged to bring it back home.
After we spent like from July 27th, we came back on August 3rd. So August 3rd night, I returned the rental in Minnesota, right beside Elk River. Picked up the truck and came back.
I know you've had a huge amount of interest in your story from Canada and from the US here. And I'm curious, in people that have reached out to you, were you just really, really unlucky? Or is this a common problem for electric vehicle owners?
You know what? I've been receiving a lot of message and phone calls. It is very, very common problem. And especially with the pickup truck, I can say, like, why we need a pickup trucks. I'm not talking about small cars. Why we need a pickup trucks? We have it because it has a more use to it, right? We have to haul RV, boat, haul the like we're trucking. We have to haul the parts, tires. So we have the pickup trucks have the more use to it. That's why we need them, right? But it doesn't solve any problem, like purpose of a pickup truck. And now lack of infrastructure, even the infrastructure is built. If you go on a trip, who want to charge every 3 hours? Who want to wait every 2 hours, like for charging every 3 hours?
Well, I mean, that's the most incredible part of this, is that even when it worked, when the charger worked, it took you over 2 hours. Whereas, I had to, fill up my gas tank the other day, and I was at the gas station for, I think, 90 seconds filling it up, and then, a minute to pay for it. And then I was on the road in 2.5 minutes, whereas you were there for over 2 hours. And that was when it worked the way it was supposed to work.
Oh yeah, because, I've been driving on the road and I love to travel. My in-laws are in Edmonton. I've been driving there last 18 years. Every year we go there once or twice. So that's around 1,400 kilometers, and we able to make it in a day over there.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't imagine to get there in a day over there with this one.
Yeah, and this
I'm
is
not
the
even
problem that
confident
a lot
anymore.
of people have raised, is that, electric vehicles maybe are fine for driving around the city, but for people like you that are driving for longer distances, it wasn't working. And now this truck that you spent $115,000 on, you're only using to basically go to work and back in your own city, right?
Yeah.
Wow. So do you think the problem then is that we need to just spend more money and invest more in building more chargers? Because that's what electric vehicle fans have said in response to your story, is that, well, this just means we need to put more work into it and we need to, make more of an effort.
To my understanding, with my little experience and the little time what I got, like I live in Winnipeg, and there's a lot of rural spaces. We go out for camp and go hunting and that area. So like every 2 hours, if you're hauling something, because if this truck goes 350 kilometers on a highway, if you're driving on a highway, we don't know how much it will go if you have a boat behind it. I couldn't find any data because they said it's been affected by the. Now it's how many places you will create that infrastructure? Like every 2 hours in every direction, and somebody who will drive it, to my understanding, would be super organized to plan it. Somebody who will be super organized, they can plan it, maybe drive in a city.
Yeah, the days of the old impromptu road trip of let's just get in the car and go somewhere are gone when you have an electric vehicle. Well, I'm glad you were able to make it home, and I'm glad you were able to salvage your holiday with your family. It wasn't ideal, but you adapted, and a good old gas-powered car was there to save the day. Dalbir Bala, president of Manitoba Freight Systems. Thank you so much for coming on, Dalbir.
Thank you very much, Andrew.
All right. Thank you very much. I realized his video was frozen near the end of that, and I can only surmise that he just has very bad luck with technology. Maybe it was the same company that made the electric vehicle chargers in Minnesota had done the webcam or the internet connection there. But we got Dalbir on, and I'm glad he was there. And, I will say, talking to real people that have gone through this is great because, everyone says, oh, yeah, why? Anyone who doesn't like electric vehicles, it's because they've never tried them. And this guy's like, yeah, I'm going to do it. He spent the money. He planned. He was so fastidious about making sure, okay, we're going to go to this charger, and if that didn't work, we'll go to this one. And then eventually he only had enough range to get back to, no, he had to tow it, but he only had enough range to do nothing and maybe get to the car rental place to rent a car that he could then take down to Chicago to enjoy his trip. Poor guy, but I'm glad he salvaged that very much. One thing I want to say is that when you talk about environmental initiatives and green initiatives, it is amazing how virtue signaling triumphs over facts and triumphs over science. And this story I found to be somewhat delightful. Do you remember back in the 2019 election, Justin Trudeau made this very audacious pledge to plant 2 billion trees? This was the tweet that he put out. It was a 2 billion tree promise. We'll plant 2 billion trees over the next 10 years. That's it. That's the tweet. Now, that was in September of 2019, which means by September 27th of 2029, we are supposed to have 2 billion new trees that have been planted by the federal government. Now, if you work that out, that's about 200 million a year. Now, for the first couple of years, the government hadn't really gotten around to planting any, and then they were supposed to plant 60 million, but only planted 22 million. And it's a little bit odd that all of this, this really bold planning on tree planting has not come to roost. Now, this is not just something that Justin Trudeau tweeted about once and forgot about. This is something that he has pledged time and time again. In October of 2019, we're going to plant 2 billion trees in the next decade so we can leave them a cleaner, greener planet. January 11th, 2021, we're planting 2 billion trees. April 22nd, 2021, we are banning harmful single-use plastics and we're planting 2 billion trees. What do we have here? June 5th, 2021, we're planting 2 billion trees. Hashtag World Environment Day, because it's not a real environmental pledge unless you put a hashtag on it. August 9th, 2021, planting 2 billion trees and much more. We'll keep doing everything we can to fight climate change and create good middle-class jobs for Canadians. Oh, I mentioned to the middle class, take a shot. Oh, October 21st, 2021, yada, 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 and planting 2 billion trees, something about kids and grandkids. October 31st, 2021, we're planting 2 billion trees and banning harmful single-use plastics. Well, if you ban harmful plastics, I believe you outlaw Justin Trudeau. Nevertheless, this is what we have been promised time and time again by the Prime Minister. We are planting 2 billion trees. Well, then we look at this headline in CBC. Ottawa using creative accounting on its 2 billion tree pledge, environmental watchdog says. You see, if you read the fine print of it, it's not the government actually planting 2 billion trees. They're trying to take credit for trees that are already being planted by other organizations, other divisions, and existing government programs, and say that those all fall under the banner of the 2 billion tree pledge. For example, in August, Natural Resources Canada has revised its numbers. They were supposed to have planted 90 million trees by 2022, and now they say they've planted 110 million trees. But initially, they had said they had only planted 29 million trees in 2021. When you look at the way they've done this, they've actually added millions of trees that were planted through other programs, through other departments, and they've decided to say that these are now trees that they're going to claim under the 2 billion. So if it's like basically COVID numbers, where they just look and find anything they can to just say, oh, this is a COVID case. So if you've planted a tree in your backyard, let the government know, because they're going to just include that in their numbers, even though they didn't do it. So essentially, their argument here is that, oh, when we said we were going to plant 2 billion trees, we really, really, really didn't want you to take it literally. It is just pure virtue signaling and government incompetence all wrapped up into one. And not that I live and breathe by what the environmental watchdogs who think the government's not doing enough on climate change say, but I believe that they're the only ones being particularly honest here when they look at the government figures and say that it just doesn't add up, that the government is not holding up its end of the bargain. And you might even say they are pining over it. I'll see myself out. Anyway, just as we wind things down here, I want to go back to the discussion I had at the outset about Pierre Poilievre and his far-right criticism that he was getting from the media. And I've had a number of people on Twitter that have pointed out to me over the course of the last little while that this has been going around, that the reporter herself actually outed herself. She tweeted about not getting a question from Pierre Poilievre on this, or not getting an answer from Pierre Poilievre. And oddly, I was trying to look her up on Twitter, and I don't know if they weren't loading up for me a second ago, but I pulled them up again. And then she was also lamenting that she didn't get a chance to ask him about giving the wrong name of PEI in French. I missed this part of it, but apparently Prince Edward Island in French, he called it the island of Saint Edward instead of the island of Prince Edward. And this was pointed out by a reporter. And then Teresa Wright said, I was going to ask him about this, but I wasn't having much luck with my attempts to ask questions. So we were back to just trying to get an answer on whether he's courting the far right vote. And this is an interesting question that I feel no one is asking but the media. And it really says a lot more about the people who bring it up than it does about Pierre Poilievre. When he's accused of really taking very reasonable arguments about whether it's the WEF or housing or inflation. And this is something that we then shoehorn into this narrative of being far right. When I hear about Pierre Poilievre from normies, from people that aren't like me, from people that don't live and breathe politics, it's actually not the mainstream media's and liberals' framing of him that they're getting. It's the videos on housing that they saw on Instagram that someone they know shared that are getting through to them. And this is, I think, if you're following Canadian politics really, really closely, you'll see probably all sides of it. But if you're not, stuff that's breaking through is not, oh, he's scary and he's talking about defunding the CBC and, oh, he's talking about the World Economic Forum and all of that. The stuff that's breaking through from the Conservatives right now on their campaign strategy is the stuff that really resonates with people. And right now we have a housing crisis. We have an affordability crisis. When you look at that clip, I don't know if we can put up, Sean, a still of the Pierre Poilievre clip we played earlier without playing the clip. I don't know if that's something we're technically able to do. If it is, put it up. But the one thing I find the most interesting about it is not that he is smacking down the reporter and saying, well, you know, that sounds like a CBC smear job. The part that I find to be the most incredible about it is if you look in the background right over, I think it's his right ear, gas is 185 cents a liter. That, to me, is the part of this story that should shock people, that this is an entirely normal thing, that gas is $1.85 a liter, $1.85.8. So we're actually, let's round it up to $1.86 if I won't get jumped on by the media for fudging the numbers. But almost $1.86 a liter. And that is not the most expensive gas is in the country at any given moment. I'm going to look up right now. I didn't plan to do this. The price of gas in Vancouver right now, because that's always a spot. At the Canco in Surrey, British Columbia, $1.94.9 a liter. At the Co-op on 104th Ave in Vancouver, $1.99.9. You go to the Chevron in Aldergrove, BC, and you're spending $2.02.9 a liter. You go to the Petrocan in Pitt Meadows. I don't know if I've been to Pitt Meadows. I don't think so. But that is $2.05.9 a liter. And this is now an entirely normal way of living. We have that clip now, or that still now. You can put that up there, Sean. $1.85.8 a liter. That, to me, is the most outrageous part of that clip. Not that Pierre Poilievre said to a reporter that a very loaded and very thinly supported question, or actually completely unsupported question, was sounding like a CBC smear job. It's that we have an affordability crisis, a cost of living crisis. Pierre Poilievre right now is the only leader of the main three that is talking about anything that matters. And that is something that the media does not seem to get. That does it for us for today. We'll wrap things up there and return on Friday with a very special episode delving in depth to the so-called safe supply of drugs and more broadly the drug crisis in this country. You won't want to miss that. We have 3 fantastic guests. One of them is Dr. Sharon Koivu. Another is Dr. Julian Summers and Adam Zivo, the National Post columnist. I hope you will tune into that. And also, just a bit of a reminder, as I said yesterday, True North is headed back to Davos. We are going to return to cover the World Economic Forum, report on this and why their own policy objectives are not actually conspiracy theories, but are things they're very proud of, and will be on the ground. And if you want to chip in and support our coverage of that, you can donate.tnc.news, donate.tnc.news. Hope you have a great rest of the day. We'll talk to you on Friday. Thank you. God bless, and good day to you all.
Thanks for listening to The Andrew Lawton Show. Support the program by donating to True North at www.tnc.news.